targeted by the Republican Party. And we were absolutely then targeted by the Republican Party. Those 6 became the real subject of friction in Columbus over the ensuing months. And in fact, this past spring, when the Republican Party actually sat down to endorse candidates, they actually failed to, and of course, at that point I wasn't running because I was running for Congress, but some of the others of that 6 group actually were threatened that they would not be endorsed by the Republican Party because they had not essentially gone along with what the leadership wanted. So this is a problem. Do this if I may. This is a problem that we have all across the country, and the Republican Party has to decide what does it stand for. So at any rate, that was the environment in which the congressional race became an issue, because as you then know, Sarah LaTourette was moved specifically into my district to run against me. You may have heard that name, LaTourette, around somewhere. And her husband, her married name is actually Kaiser. Her husband, Scott Kaiser, you'll now see is organizing for John Kasich in Northeast Ohio. He works for the Republican Party. So when the Republican Party employee whose wife is named LaTourette moves into your district and decides to run against you, people ask me, well, do you think the Republican Party was behind that? And as I told one reporter, well, I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night. And so I had to choose where I was going to do battle. And Chuck Laughlin knows very well how difficult that choice was, because he and I was it a Kenny King's we were sitting at?
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
The Kentucky Fried Chicken, yeah, we were, we were really wringing our hands, praying. I was running the bathroom a lot, what were we going to do? But I decided that running for Congress would give me an opportunity to really bring forward the conservative values that were so important to all of us, the constitutional values, the budget issues, all the rest that we care about, in a way that I could never do in my state representative seat. And I was going to be facing exactly the same machine and exactly the same money. And so I decided I was going to go for, in effect, the bigger prize where I thought I could be more effective in the campaign. So we started that day. We filed, that was the last filing day in February. We had 90 days until the election, 90 days. Folks, most people, when they run for Congress, they start 2 years out. But we started 90 days. And I thought, well, at least I've got some money in my campaign account. I had about $70,000 in my campaign account. And then someone told me, I think he's sitting right there actually, said, well, you can't spend any of that money from your state race to run it for a federal office. That's against the law. So we not only did we only have 90 days, but we didn't have $1, not $1. And of course, Dave Joyce had already been published in a newspaper that he had $1.2 or $1.4 million already. But I tell you something. We had 12 weeks, and in that 12 weeks, with your help, we raised about $120,000. That's about $10,000 a week. That's remarkable. That's remarkable. When you start off from a dead stop to raising at the rate of $10,000 a week. So I was actually pretty excited we were able to raise that much money. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough in part because our target wasn't clear. You'll recall in that race that there was nobody running for governor, nobody running for auditor, treasurer. None of those statewide races were up for grabs in the primary. So the top of the ticket, if you will, was my race for Congress with Dave Joyce. And as a result, there wasn't a lot of excitement in the race, although actually it got kind of exciting for me. But there weren't a lot of other candidates in the race, and so the general consensus was, well, there won't be many people coming out to vote. It'll be a very low turnout vote, and you probably heard this amongst a lot of pundits. Well, it'll be a low turnout vote. And we actually were predicting about 40,000 people to vote. Now that 40,000 would have been a record low turnout. And actually, we spent the money that we had then targeting those 40,000 or so folks. And you figure this out, you look who votes consistently in primaries and so forth, and we targeted those folks. Turned out there were, I think it was about 54,000 actually voted. And that meant there were 12 or 14,000 folks that never heard from me. And while they never heard from me, they did hear from my opponent. Thanks to, where's Joe? Joe, where are you?
I'm right
You know, when I was thinking of the other Joe, these are a sample of the flyers that were sent out. We figured there's at least $500,000 worth of these things went out. Frankly, to tell a bunch of lies. Now, despite the fact we didn't win the campaign, there were many people that thought it was miraculous what we did. I know one person said to me, you've achieved something incredible. You've turned Dave Joyce into a conservative. Because that's what a lot of these cards say. You know, and when the race started, it was kind of interesting, because when the race started, the initial strategy they had was, that Lynch, he's a crazy Tea Party radical. You know, he believes in the Constitution and the Declaration, all those ancient documents. He's too far right, he's too far, but that wasn't working too well. So they pretty quick turned around and decided, no, I'm the liberal, and Dave Joyce was the conservative. And that's the message that they hammered home. And among the 40,000 people that we actually communicated with, I am convinced we won. That is, those folks got the message about who the real conservative was. But among the other 10 or 15,000 that never heard from us, they didn't know. They just didn't know who I was. And we only lost by 10%. That translates to about 2,500 votes in a race that was had over 50, or about 54,000 or so people voted. So another 2,500 votes would have done the trick. The other miscalculation, if you will, which I blame myself for, was not appreciating how many voters were going to be in Cuyahoga County specifically. All the folks in this room did an incredible job in Lake County. And I actually, in my mind, had said, well, Lake County is where the race is going to be, because that's one of the largest blocks of voters in Lake County. And you look at a map of the 14th district, Lake County is where it is. But in Cuyahoga County, even though it's just a sliver of eastern Cuyahoga County, that's a very dense sliver, a lot of voters there. And that's really where we lost the race, in eastern Cuyahoga County. And the difference between eastern Cuyahoga County and most of the other counties is that we did not have a strong ground game in Cuyahoga County. In Lake County, thanks to the Laughlins and many of you, we had a very strong ground game. In Geauga County, we had a ground game. Ashtabula, Portage County, even Summit County, we had a ground game. In Cuyahoga County, our ground game depended upon an organization called the Cuyahoga Valley Republicans, which some of you know, CVR, very well-known conservative Republican organization that meets over on the Brecksville area pretty much. I think it's Brecksville, but anyway, meets over in Cuyahoga County. And we had an interesting turn of events there, because they endorsed candidates, like many of the groups do. And I was invited in for an endorsement and had the interview, and then they had a vote, and they endorsed me. Immediately, the Joyce campaign complained that they had endorsed me, and he had not yet had an opportunity to come before the group for a vote. Now, he'd been invited and invited and invited, he just didn't bother. So they decided that they could endorse two candidates if they were both good, so he was again invited to come and seek the endorsement, but he withdrew. He said he didn't want to do it apparently, and he never did seek their endorsement. But there were a lot of, shall I say, establishment Republicans and elected officials in that group that were very upset that I had received that endorsement. And that group, which does have a very active group of folks that go door to door, make phone calls, that kind of thing, that group never really got off the ground. As much as I spoke to them about, you got to get out on the street, we got to do this thing like we did in Lake County, you got to go door to door, you got to make phone calls. Never really happened with CVR, so we didn't have any ground game, and that's where we really lost the race.